Hello ladies and gentlemen, this video will be about money. I find this topic to be nowadays very important because we live in not very stable world. A friend of mine some time ago sent me a message and she said, Krasi, are we going to be able to make money again? So thank you, Nora, for your question. I started researching seriously from astrological perspective, from the perspective of the ancient Babylonian astrology, which is very scientific. I correlated astrology with the findings of the great contemporary historian, the Russian historian Andrei Ilyich Fursov. His lectures are of the true, not the false, the real history of the world. He is a genius, hero of our time, awakened, enlightened. His lectures are mainly in Russian. I know that he was professor in American university, but there is not much to find in English of his works. So I researched his Russian literature and lectures, and I made a summary out of lots of pages of his work, and I made a summary of the most important historical events which I correlated with astrology. So it means we went back to history to see what the cycles which are repeated now meant back historically, to see what to expect in the future. We cannot look into the future if we do not know the history, and we cannot know if we do not correlate history with astrology. So this is basically what I did, and I want to present it to you in a summarized model, because Andrei Fursov was very detailed in his lectures. Excuse me. So I made a summary. I hope this will not be way. I try to make it really not to be boring, because sometimes lots of data can be boring. Of course, I will introduce to you some dates and historical cycles, both historically and for the world, and astrologically. Now, we now live, where to start from? We'll go back to the beginning of this cycle that we are ending now. Actually, simultaneously, we're ending, now as we speak today, we're ending three major cycles, three major historical but also astrological cycles. We are really ending them. So we need to go back in the beginning of these cycles, and I hope this will be interesting for you, because we are now finishing, leaving the capitalistic social system. We live in the capitalistic social system, so we need to go back and see what brought the capitalistic society to the planet Earth, to us, to the people. So let me tell you, now the capitalistic society started in the middle. Of course, I have to tell you, I will be consulting my notes, because there is the summary of dates and cycles which I don't want to, which I summarized for myself, and I don't want to miss. So now, as we speak, the capitalistic system is about to end, and basically now, today, we live in post-capitalistic social system, post-capitalistic society, which is valid for the whole world. Doesn't matter that somewhere had such or other form and shape. So the capitalistic society started as pre-industrial. In the middle of 16th century to the 17th century, it was the beginning of this era. How it started? started very interestingly. Uranus, which was not discovered officially then in the 16th century and was in Aquarius, and Pluto, who also not yet discovered, was in Scorpio, and both formed exact square. But more important is something that I will explain a little bit for the people who are new to my channel, because in other videos I've been explaining about the dodecatemoria system which we use in the ancient astrology. And the dodecatemoria system is used very much for the predictive purposes, especially in the mundane, the world prediction astrology. So in 1453, year 1453, the world changed dodecatemoria, and this is major because one dodecatemoria is a cycle of 180 years. 180 years. So in year 1453, exactly around the timing when the capitalistic pre-industrial society social system started, we changed dodecatemoria from Leo to Cancer. What is this thing, dodecatemoria? In the ancient astrology, especially the Babylonian astrology, we use equal house system. It means that every house or every zodiacal sign is 30 degrees. These 30 degrees are divided in sections. Each section is 2.5 degrees. So we start as usual from, let's say you take the sign Aries, you start with Aries, then you have Taurus, Gemini, and so on, so on, so on. But because the celestial sphere is not moving this way but anti-clockwise, we actually, the astronomically, the sphere, the equinoxes, which show in which era we are, in which sub-era we are moving backwards. It means if you take the sign Aries, it will be Pisces, and then it will be Aquarius and Capricorn and so on. So in this very year, 1453, the point of the equinox, vernal equinox, changed from Leo into Cancer. And this is major because mini era of 180 years finished, for new era of another 180 years to start. And we're talking about fourth house, the most fundamental, because the fourth house in astrology is ruled by Cancer, the moon. This has implication on people, society. So back then we had such change, and then the capitalistic social system started. Then from the middle of the 16th century to, guess where, this is amazing, to the French Revolution, this took place until the French Revolution. So we've got a cycle of 130 years. And you know what? We always have these cycles of 130 years because they are marked by aspects, cycles between Uranus and Pluto. So basically, from the middle of the 16th century, from the so-called Westphalian world to the French Revolution, we are marking the first historical era of the pre-industrial capitalism. Wait a bit, we will go to the second cycle, to the third cycle, we will also reach our nowadays. But to tell you two words, what is this Westphalian timing? This is, I researched, this is very interesting. This is a treaty in 1648, European settlement, which ended the 30 years war negotiated in the Westphalian towns in Germany. So this is basically a peace treaty for France, Sweden, Italy, Holland, Dutch people, Germany, Spain. So basically it has to do with Europe. So, and also the Holy Roman Empire was forced to recognize its German princes as absolute sovereign. Okay, this is just a detail. So we're dealing with the first cycle. Then we have what happened in 1780. This is the French Revolution. Very important thing. Discovery of Uranus, the official discovery of Uranus happened in March of 1780 by William Herschel. And then Pluto and Saturn formed exact sextile on that day, and they discovered Uranus. And guess what? We had the eruption of the French Revolution. Uranus is the revolutionary planet. We now go to the middle, the developed capitalism of our society. This is our social system, which we're just living. So we have developed, or the middle period. This is from the beginning of the French Revolution to the First World War. We have another 130 years cycle, which is formed again by always by 100 years. 130 years is a cycle which is formed between the trans-Saturnian planets. So the First World War actually started, the First World War from 1914 officially to 1918, and I think on the Balkans even started in 1912. So we studied at school. So guess what? Pluto-Saturn exact conjunction in Gemini. And we had the beginning of the First World War. And then finally the last late period of the social system, the capitalistic social system, is starting in 1910 with the First World War, and it is about until the 19th century, and it is ending in a very interesting way, in a cycle which is divided in sub-cycles, which I have to also explain to you in a moment. So in the 19th century, with the Second World War, the capitalistic society exhausted itself. And guess what we have? The discovery of Pluto in 1930, in 18 February 1930 by Clyde Tombaugh. At that point, and then let me tell you what will happen, but this is maybe for a little bit later because we're talking about Pluto. And remember, the elites are talking about Agenda 2030. What will happen with Pluto around the year 2030, according to official study by the astronomers and astrophysicists, the Pluto's entire atmosphere will have entirely collapsed, freezing into ice and deposing onto its surface. Ice will be deposing onto the surface of Pluto in 2030. And when we know that such planets as Pluto and Uranus have major impact on our global history, let's see what will be happening in 2020 to 2030. But for this we will speak a little bit later. So through the 20th century, capitalism developed due to non-economic things. Firstly, robbery of colonies, but how not? It is Pluto participated, and initially the first cycle of the capitalistic society started with Pluto and Uranus both squaring each other, disharmoniously squaring each other. So the capitalistic social system was fed by non-economic means, which is the robbery of the colonies. And also later, after the Second World War, when we have almost the completion of this third cycle, which is the late cycle, we have then Saturn Pluto exact square, when Saturn is fallen in Aries with Ketu and Pluto is in Cancer in 8th degree. So we know that actually after the Second World War, the world was recovering. The Soviet Union at that time was recovering. The Germany was recovering. And then when this era of restoration ended and the Soviet miracle ended, we have rise in the robbery of colonies. You know about Belgium, Holland, Portugal, and so on. But as I mentioned actually in previous video, in 1945 officially the Second World War ended, and this is when Mars rose for the first time in Pisces. But this is a little bit in brackets. And then we have the fourth cycle, which is really the cycle which is ending now. This is the cycle which is the end of this ascending phase, because after the Second World War until now we had ascension when they used non-economic principles which I just mentioned, which was this mean principles ruled by the planet which is ruling the 8th house. This is Pluto. So this is complete period of descending. So after the second, so between the 2008 and 2014, we call this the terminal phase, lethal phase of our social system. And here comes very interesting part. Why lethal? In 2008, you all remember the bank financial crisis. What happened then? Another very interesting cycle, which was Saturn was fallen in Leo and was making opposition exact to the point opposition in to Aquarius, Uranus. So Uranus was in Aquarius, Saturn was detriment fallen in Leo, and in 2008 these two major planets very much related to money were making opposition to each other. So, and then this is the terminal, lethal, let's say, phase of our social system. 2008 to 2014. What happened in 2014? Something amazing. The world entered another dodecatemoria. The point of the vernal equinox moved from Taurus to Aries. And this happened in 2014. Aries, the sign of war. And you'll see later what happened with the wars, but this is another topic. So now we are in a very unique situation of when several long history cycles of different duration are ending simultaneously. So what is this? The American cycle of capital accumulation is essentially ending. This already we see. This is, I don't want to get deep into this because maybe I'll make another video on this. As you see, also America is having the horoscope of America is also America has Pluto return, Uranus return. Like America is entering already and changing and entering a totally different social system, and this is happening before our eyes. So the US hegemony ends, and also it was expected actually by historians, different than Andrei Ilyich Fursev, that the cycle which is ending now will follow the pattern of previous cycles. So basically from 1980, a new crisis phase began, which has no unlock compared to previous cycles, and it is continuing until the 22nd century, and it will most probably, such crisis also based on what? On Saturn Pluto conjunction in 2021. So this cycle of crisis will continue most probably until the years 2040 and maybe further. So let me tell you about the three different systematic crises which took place in history and which we can correlate to the times of now. So the closest systematic historical crisis that we know of is the crisis of the feudalistic society, which was from mid-10th and 15th to the mid-15th century. And it was prolonged to the third European Dark Ages of years 1348 to 1648. So we are talking about 300 years of dark ages. These are known the crisis of the 300 years dark ages, which coincide with one of the phases of the Little Ice Age. This was the Little Ice Age, which was known only in Europe actually. So during this crisis, some of the lords and burghers turned, and often against their own will, into capitalists, and by the middle of the 10th century, capitalism also took shape in the middle of the until the middle of the 15th century, when the capitalistic society began. So we know this to be the social system until nowadays, but we remember the 300 years of black dark ages, which continue until to this Peace of Westphalia. I mentioned this to you. This is the treaty which they signed for the European countries. But this is just an example, because you know what is happening in Europe pretty much was happening all over the world. So Europe was tormented by very dark centuries until the Renaissance. And actually, all this is caused by the cycles of Pluto-Saturn, Uranus-Saturn cycles, which I just briefly mentioned to you. Then the second crisis we need to mention was the crisis of the ancient slave society. And this actually crisis is until fall of Rome 476. Guess what? Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Leo. So this cycle of crisis started in the 2nd century, continued until the year 476, the fall of Rome. But actually, according to Fursev, this is not true. He believes actually that this was a crisis, but the fall of Rome took place in the 6th century, when the technical infrastructures of the Roman Empire collapsed. And guess what? They had great migration of people, barbarization, archaization of the once flourishing civilizations. Does this remind you now of the migration of people? So the fall of Rome took place actually in the 6th century, but the greatest crisis started in the 5th century after Christ. So then we're talking about events which we cannot really follow up astronomically, and this is the third systematic crisis very far in the past, Upper Paleolithic, which lasted 10 to 15,000 years from the 2nd century to the 19th millennium after Christ, and it was accompanied by serious natural ethnographic reduction in the population of the planet. So this is another type of crisis. So we see in this, what we see in the current crisis, which is caused by the Dodecatemoria, which we entered in 2014, the Martial, the Aries Dodecatemoria, Saturn-Pluto conjunction, and also the cycle which Saturn and Uranus are also completing now. They are forming a square in 2025 also. Firstly, we see the desire of the top world capitalist class to become the masters of a new system. So they want to be the lords. This resembles the crisis of the feudalistic society, and to create new system only of lords, monarchs and burghers, which was exactly happening back then. And they absolutely want to destroy 80 to 90% of the world population. Secondly, we see something which is resembling this great migration which I mentioned to you, and this is they create on purpose the great migration of people during the crisis, and this happened also in the feudalistic society, great crisis of feudalism, migration, but at that time this was solved by the entrance of a new system. However, we see absolutely reproducing the picture like the crisis of antiquity. And thirdly, the current crisis is accompanied by serious natural disasters, whether they're caused by harm, by human by human hand, doesn't really matter, but we see crisis of natural disasters also which happen. And then something very interesting, there is also something which was known to have happened in when the Roman Empire was collapsing. They concentrated also back then their elites in temples which they were building. And what the Romans did when the end of the Roman Empire was approaching, the Romans started building technopolises, like castles, large temples, castles. When Romans moved from cities to such fortified fortresses, this happened after the crisis of the 3rd century. And they started building and creating special zones for their elites at that time. This resembles of contemporary Emirates, Dubai. It is well known, absolutely official data, is that Dubai, actually the United Arab Emirates, they will have petroleum only for maximum another 10 years. But they rely on something different. They started building, if you remember, when was this, like maybe 15 years ago, they built this palm area, and immediately I know that only like 7 hours after this palm area was built, people like Robert De Niro, Angelina Jolie bought properties there. So basically Dubai, Emirates, Abu Dhabi, Dubai are becoming place only for very rich people on the planet, exactly copying, maybe without even knowing, the model from the ending of the Roman Empire. which they did after the first crisis took place, 3rd century, then 476 after Christ time, and so this is just a sign that this is truly end of a social system, this particular way of building place, residences, fortresses, if you want, only for the wealthiest. And this is exactly the example of Dubai. Of course, Dubai is not the only place on the planet with such purpose. Maybe the Silicon Valley, it is believed that Thailand, Kazakhstan, the capital, is becoming one of these places, but they are building their fortresses of only for the elites. So basically, this crisis ending of the social system is accompanied by the globalization, which is very, very typical for the era of Aquarius, to globalize. Well, Aquarius can be a very benevolent sign, but to globalize is actually, the meaning of the globalization is only to make the rich richer and the poor poorer. And this is also based on historical overview. Actually, this is one of the features of the sign of Aquarius, the malefic features. And as you know, the planets and the zodiacal signs can have their very benevolent and very malefic vibration and manifestations. So the globalizations is one of them, and it belongs actually to the future, but because it is part of the ending era of the capitalistic social system, the globalization will also disappear together with this social system. Now the question is, where are we heading? Where are we heading? Let me tell you, not with one word, but we indeed are completing 3 different cycles, which I just listed. Hopefully I did it in understandable summary. As I reminded to you, in 2014 we changed Dodecatemoria. In 2014, only 10 years passed, but each Dodecatemoria is lasting 180 years. And each ending of social system, to me, the ending clearly was outlined by the new Dodecatemoria in 2014, so this is 10 years ago. Each ending of social system is historically actually followed by the 300 years of dark age. But people lived through the dark age, especially in Europe. These dark ages were very, very vivid, very, very dark in Europe. 300 years of dark age. So basically, slowly we are entering the 300 years period of dark age, and we entered the cycle of the new Dodecatemoria 10 years ago, and this is Dodecatemoria of Mars, of Aries. It is not benevolent. How we saw that we entered new Dodecatemoria historically? It was ISIS at that time, the Islamic State, and they did very bad killings, massacre, literally. I think it was in Iraq, in Mosul. This is what they did in 2014. With this, they really marked the new Dodecatemoria, the new cycle that we entered. How is this going to look financially? Let me tell you. Dark ages, people also managed to make money also in the dark ages. But let me be more specific. What is typical for the era of Aquarius? Aquarius, we are not yet in Aquarius. We still have 180 plus 1 Dodecatemoria plus 1 Dodecatemoria, 2 Dodecatemorias minus 10, so 350 years until we enter officially the era of Aquarius. But how are we going to live through this time financially if we are heading to 300 years of dark ages, which actually, as you saw, astrologically is quite possible to happen. The era of Aquarius is classically Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. Uranus is God's wisdom. Uranus is the highest level of intellect. If Mercury, Hermes, is the intellectual mind, Uranus is the higher and higher vibration of intellect. It means the higher your expertise, the higher your uniqueness in this era of the collective consciousness, Aquarius. There is a place for unique talent, unique intellect, unique capabilities. So the higher your expertise, talent, uniqueness, knowledge, intellectual capabilities, the higher your chance to make money. Because as you see, the elites are trying really to make the poor poorer, the rich richer, and to have really the only there was even I think it was a document which was saying that well, there total destruction of the middle class, because this is age of extremes. We live in social system which is not capitalistic anymore. We need to realize, and we don't know what it is. It is something which is about Aquarius. It is something which is about the collective, very collective, division of extremes, indeed, big poverty and wealth. This is very possible to be the case. There is nothing wrong to be spiritual and wealthy. Master Being Sudunu is saying it is very good to be rich, but you also need to be generous. You need to be able to be helping the poor, and you need also to be wise and reasonable. So nothing wrong if we manage with our own talents, expertise to make good money. This is wonderful, but we need to help eventually the others. So those of people of our society who manage this also should not forget to help the collective. The thing is that the era of Aquarius is also supposed to be benevolent, because Enki is ruling Aquarius, and this is the highest vibration that we know from the celestial spheres. And Enki is a healer. Enki is a magician. He is knowing everything. So we need to know everything, not only to get information through Google and internet, because information is not knowledge. Information is not knowledge. It took me time to realize that. Knowledge is something very different. So we need to be very knowledgeable, to connect with nature, to rely on the Creator, God, ourselves, and also there will be way to make money, once again to repeat, when we have high level of expertise, like to be unique. This is absolutely the key. This is absolutely the only way to be able to make money in the coming times, especially if we are entering dark ages. I believe we are. Tell you seriously, I believe we are. Because you see, Uranus entered Taurus. Taurus is the sign which is ruling also the animals, the cow. You see how they are trying to destroy people's farms. It will be very hard to remain untouched by the dirty agenda of the low vibrational manifestations of Uranus, for example, because Uranus can be amazing, can also manifest on a very low level, like total destruction. They see just what I heard 2 days ago in Germany. They entered the chicken farms of people under the fake excuse that there is a flu, and they destroyed thousands of animals with no true without any true reason, fake. So we need to be unique in our expertise and connected with God, so that we don't experience the misfortunate attempts, the dirty hand of the matrix. So this is my analysis, ladies and gentlemen, to tell you I did, I went through lots of papers of historians of Andrei Ilyich Fursev in order to see, to take only the essence and present it to you. Took me days of work. I hope it was kind of clear. I hope it makes sense. This is serious video for me. I was excited to record it, and if you really have comments, something to add, this would be really great. If there are historians among you who have more knowledge on this, also please share. This will be useful for all of us. What else to tell you? Just briefly to see in my notes that I don't forget. Well, something nice Andrei Ilyich Fursev was also saying. He was speaking about the Russians. He said, well, we went through hardship, so the 300 years of eventually of Dark Age wouldn't bother us. Maybe this is a good ending of my story for you today. Well, he gives lots of information also, but I found this a little bit too much and a bit boring on institutions like IMF, World Bank, what their dirty place is. Of course, also this will change. They are, of course, trying to dominate, to decrease even the purpose of people to be completely dominating and controlling. This is part of the Pluto in Saturn story. Pluto in Capricorn, sorry, Pluto is transiting through Capricorn. Well, again, our uniqueness will take us out from the matrix. And let's stop here. All the best to you. Bye bye.